What's up, peeps? So this week it's about you, me, and Tuscany, and all things rom-com because I am a rom-com girly. So sit back, relax, and get ready for Denise and rom-coms. So I went last night to see you, me, and Tuscany, and I had not heard a whole lot about this movie before going to see it. So, not because they weren't doing promos or things like that, but because I don't spend a lot of time on social media anymore, on the internet anymore. I have a lot of things that I want to get done this year. So, I've dialed back how much time I surf the internet just kind of willy nilly. But I had been on TikTok and people were talking about getting tickets to go and see it. So I had to go and find out what they were talking about. But it immediately roped me in because I hadn't seen romantic comedy in theaters in a while, actually. Um, so rom-coms are my thing. I read a lot of romance, and if you could tie fake dating into it or, lying about something, I'm there. So immediately I was hooked. And the fact that there's Halle Bailey in it and Reggae John, that's all I needed. A little bit of Italy in there, a little bit of cooking in there. I'm there. So I pre-purchased my tickets. I went last night and I have some thoughts. So first things first, I really love the cinematography of the film. Like in the opening shots, the way that they tell you without telling you that she's in New York City. The different shots of different buildings of Central Park. I loved every minute of it. You kind of get roped into what she's doing before the other shoe drops on what's actually happening in the scene. But I think it's great. The fact that she has a close friendship with a friend who works at a hotel. I know what that's like. Um, but also understanding that some of the decisions are having to be made because she's broken, doesn't have any money. And then you get the backstory as to, her mother passing away and some of the decisions she's had to make with regards to her mother being ill and whether or not she could continue going to school. I think that certain things happen to a lot more people around the world when a person close to them gets sick and then they're responsible for paying the bill. Um, that's always a storyline that people are going to resonate with more than you know. And especially about, losing parents and things like that. Um, that's a common thread later on when she meets Reggae's character. So that really kind of sat with me. But moving on, there's nothing like shit hitting the fan and then having to go to a bar to drown your sorrows, and you only have enough coin for maybe a burger. And thank God you have a friend that works at the hotel business because you need that discount. Again, been there. Um, Using hotel discounts because that's always a plus. Uh, but of course, she strikes up a conversation with a good looking gentleman at the bar. And I have to say, maybe I was wishing my life was a little more interesting at that point when Mateo enters the picture and they have a sweet connection, but he's a man that she met at a bar. So there's not a lot that she knows about him, nor does she know if he's telling her the truth. Um, but either way, she needs a place to stay, so he invites her to stay in his room. And he ends up falling asleep before doing the business, which is probably both good and bad. Um, but I thought it was funny. There was a lot of online commentary about whether or not the story was realistic. And nobody who really enjoys rom-coms cares about that. We don't care. It, Later on, I'm going to give my list of kind of favorite rom-coms. and none of them are really based in reality. So who cares? Um, but you can tell when people don't really watch rom-coms, some of their criticisms of it, it makes sense as to why you wouldn't like it, but the people who do don't care. So why not go through this man's phone and find his unused villa in Tuscany and travel there? I would say poor Mateo, but he reveals that he's been running from his family. They have a lot of expectations about his life that he doesn't want to actively fulfill. And it's kind of a cute sharing of a story with another stranger, right? Um, it's the fact that she goes into his phone and takes these pictures, and then decides to fly to Tuscany. Now, in her defense, though, the tickets were already purchased, so she's just using a ticket that she had already paid for. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, I do think, as a person who travels and is kind of anal retentive about itinerary, just traveling places and not knowing what's going on and not getting the proper lodging beforehand, it really struck me to the core. Can't have that. You know what I mean? But anyway, she gets to Tuscany and she meets up with her Uber driver, which I think is like the highlight of the film. Her relationship with Lorenzo, the Uber driver, is spectacular. So, and he gives her kind of great advice. Also, kind of lovey rom-com advice, which I think is great. Loved it. But I think that relationship with a person who was in Italy, I think was fantastic because she needed a friend, and she gets that in Lorenzo. But she gets there, and she doesn't have a place to stay. They're having a festival, like a week-long festival that she doesn't know anything about. And as far as everything that goes on in the movie that she does know about, it was interesting that she didn't know about this week-long festival and doesn't have a place to stay. But what is rom-com if you don't almost get run over and your life taken from you by the love of your life? I feel like that's happened in a couple of other movies I watch, and you just know this person is for you. So maybe I should just walk out into traffic and see what happens there. But you never know. Anyway, it occurs to her that she doesn't have a place to stay because, of course, Reggae's character is kind of rude to her. She's trying to order food and he just comes storming in and, whatever. And then they start speaking Italian, which, while she does know some of it, is not fluent in Italian. And they're just talking, like she's not standing there. And, kind of rude, kind of not. But she makes her presence known, which I think is great. But it's important to know that she still doesn't have a place to stay. And I was like, well, clearly there's only one solution. And again, another bit of criticism that was happening online when I started seeing people were going and was coming back. A lot of it was like, why would I go and watch this movie? It's kind of predictable, blah, blah, blah. Again, yes, that's what rom-coms are. That's what they are as a genre. Like, in movies, in books, kind of predictable. They have a trope, they have a formula that they follow. People of a certain age have figured out what the checklist is, and we go with that. We know going into it what we're getting into. So please stop telling us that things are predictable. We know that. We love it anyway. So obviously, he, after having a conversation with Mateo and knowing that he is not going to be at home because he's running from his family and the villa kind of sits empty and there's no place else to stay for the week. Everything's booked up because of the festival, which she should have known before she got there. Obviously, she has to break in and stay at Mateo's house. Is it breaking in if she had the key that you only just hid like outside? I don't know. Yes and no, but what have you. Breaking in seemed kind of harsh. And of course, it was fine until his like family shows up and she's trying to escape. They're calling the cops because who is this person? Um, but of course, she's a professional house sitter. So her going through people's things isn't new, but and even trying on their clothes isn't new, which I found to be a little bit more interesting than I thought. Some of that was kind of weird, like you wearing these people's clothes. So on down to the undergarments. Come on, lady. So of course, while going through Mateo's things, she finds a engagement ring and decides to try it on, which is what she's wearing when she's confronted by Mateo's mother and grandmother, who are trying to decide if she broke in the house, do they need to call the police? Call somebody, she needs to be arrested. And so any regular person would lie and say, I'm obviously his fiance and he'll be here at the end of the week. You can't do anything but laugh because it has to further the story. And I thought it was great. So instead of being arrested, obviously they're excited that Mateo is getting married and decided to come back and tell the family that, except, of course, none of that is true. And there's your major plot point right there. That's usually in any and every rom-com. And if you are me, that's the sort of shit you live for. If you tell me a book has a fake dating trope or some sort of lie that's going to be revealed after it's gone on for way too long, I'm here for it. Like, I'm like a kid in a candy store, okay? So this was right up my alley. But of course, nothing is ever that easy because we run back into Reggae's character, who's named Michael, who is supposedly like Mateo's brother, but you find out that his parents have died and he's kind of an orphan. He was taken in by Mateo's family and they were kind of raised as brothers. So this is a little more complicated than we originally thought. But no matter, Mateo's family is in love with her. Like, really, no questions asked, right? They just kind of go with it. And Mateo has a cousin who is documenting everything on his phone, posting it to social media. That's all he's doing. And at some point, you know that Mateo is going to see these things online and have to return. But more on that later. It was like an instant kind of found family rom-com, which is also a good one. It's my number 2 favorite genre, found family rom-com, after fake dating. Let's get to that. But anyway, Lorenzo is kind of telling her as her Uber driver and newfound friend, like, I've listened to your rom-com story. This is wild. But you can't keep this up. You have to tell them the truth. Or you could not tell them anything and enjoy their company and then go home and not say a word. But we realize it's like $2,000 to change the date of her ticket out of Italy. So that's not happening. And there's no place to stay. So she has to stay there and pretend. Which over time you figure is harder and harder. But I have to tell you, I lived for her scenes with Michael. The two of them had a lot in common, especially the scene where they're like drinking his wine. Old girl gets drunk, and that's always a fun time. And so you can see that they have a mutual attraction for each other. And that is going to complicate things if you're pretending to be somebody else's fiance. It also complicates things when Mateo's ex, on again, off again, shows up and is throwing daggers at her and all of these things. It was cute and whimsical to watch Hallie run through the great fields in Tuscany. It's now on my to-do list if and when I do visit Tuscany. Um, Although traveling as a Black person is a little leery, so you never know. But she made it look fun, and that's what's important. Especially the obligatory wet shirt, take it off scene. I was hooked, hook, line, and sinker. Um, but of course, all hell breaks loose because Mateo shows up. He tells her, "You have to tell my family the truth. You've come here, you've lied, you've told them things, and they've gotten their hopes up, and none of this is happening." Right? And it's all good while you're yelling at her, but then you get in front of your family. And she even tries to explain, like, we have to have a game plan because your family is really excited, you know? And just like a man, he doesn't listen to a word that she says. Although she has figured out a lot of things about his family and his relationship with Michael in the 3 days that she's been there. And she has smoothed things over because she's getting ready to tell the truth. Of course, he cuts her off, and now they're in this together. And there's my fake dating trope that I enjoy. But this one is turned on its head because her attraction is not to the man that she's told everybody she wants to be with. It's to his brother, quote unquote. So, drama, which I enjoy. And as much time as she and Michael spend together, he keeps trying to pretend that he's not feeling an attraction to her. Because it's weird. She's marrying my brother for all intents and purposes, and I need to figure out how to be happy on my own. So yeah. But I found it to be interesting that the older people in the family do older people things, right? Like classic older people things, like trying to advise young people how to work through situations. And it was the father who said, you're my son too, and you also deserve to be happy. And maybe you need to get out your own way and learn how to be happy. Well, we know that kids can be difficult and often get in their own way, but what have you. But of course, something happens, and, Hallie's character had already said, like, I had gone to culinary school. I didn't finish culinary school because my mother passed away. And Reggae's character was like, my parents passed away, but I think I wanted to take over what they left so that they could be proud of me. It was two different sides of the same coin, which I thought was great. But she hadn't cooked in like years, so she knew what to do, but it's just not something that she had done for a long while, following a traumatic event. And I think that when Mateo volunteers her to help cook with the family, after only had showing up the night before, I thought that was weird. I was like, what? When did she tell you that she had cooked last, or you just came here volunteering information? But okay. And it was Michael that was like, why are we thrusting this upon her? But what have you. And also, like, Mateo knows that they're not really in a relationship, but he's so bad at pretending. Like, he just is caught doing things all over town. And I mean, it's a small town. There's actually a scene where she's walking through the town and everybody's calling her by name. Hey, good morning, blah, blah, blah. That's weird. That's a lot for me. And it happened when I remember I was dating this guy, and he invited me to a party with his friends, and all of them knew me by name. And they just kept, walking up to me, like, oh, you must be. I've heard a lot of things about you. Now, it's jarring when people hear a lot of things about you, but you haven't heard anything about them. It means I'm being talked about, hopefully in a great light, but They never had anything negative to say to me, but I just was like, wow, this is weird. And that scene gave me those vibes. Michael was like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a small town. I'm like, yeah, kind of used to New York City, where I could be my own dot and nobody cares. Uh, but of course, shit hits the fan. Um, Michael accuses Mateo of not wanting to be faithful in the relationship that he's in, and they break out into a fight. I did not see that coming. I should have. I did not see that coming. And I consider myself a veteran of rom-coms, not see that shit coming. And of course, she has to admit that they're not really in a relationship. I lied to you guys. Um, some of what you think you know about me is not true. And of course, Michael is hurt by this. But me, I would have run away and never looked back. And this is why I couldn't live in a rom-com, because given the opportunity to run away, I will take it. Um, so yeah, but more old people doing old people things. Nona basically tells her, so you think you're the only person that's ever lied to somebody before? You think that this family was already kind of not speaking to one another and keeping secrets from one another before you showed up. So nothing about what you've bought here is any different than what we were already doing, which I thought was important. But she was like, when are you going to stop pretending to be somebody else and do your own thing? Because you can. You just need to make a life for yourself. I was like, great message. Almost in tears, because I enjoy going to the movies and having a good cry. Okay? And so maybe you're not down to go to a movie with me if you're not willing to cry. And that's okay. But of course, our two characters get together. There's a happily ever after. And that's what the hell I came for. So 5 out of 5 stars. Am I going to see it again? Absolutely. This is going to be added to my list of comfort movies. It involves travel, meeting a gruff man, falling in love. Yes, 5 out of 5 stars. And it made me laugh too, because the first thing I thought about was the movie Leap Year. And as much as people hated that movie, I loved it. So, yeah. What are some of my favorite rom-com comfort movies, you ask? Well, I appreciate you for thinking of this question. And I don't have a script prepared. Obviously, I do. But some of the most recent ones off the top of my head have been Always Be My Maybe. And I think that one was on Netflix. And I believe it had Ali Wong and Randall Park in it. And you're always going to get me if you're going to do a title that's a pun, because Always Be My Baby by Mariah Carey. I mean, come on. It had the makings for something that was going to suck me in. So I think this was 2019. And I watched it a few times and had it going on in the background with me doing work from home as a comfort movie of mine. So that's the first one that comes to mind. And it was weird because it also had like Daniel Day Kim and Keanu Reeves in it. And it made sense as to why they were in it. So I think that's great. The Proposal is always a favorite one of mine, with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock. And it's kind of another kind of travel kind of romance where you find out more about the other person. And we're going to fake date and we're going to lie to people and tell everybody that we're together, but we're not actually together. So, right up my alley. Hitch is another one where there was a time in my life where if Will Smith was in a movie, I was probably going to watch it. So Hitch was kind of funny. And him running a dating service where he's teaching men how to date women. is more relevant now than ever, but still a funny movie. Um, to all the boys I've loved before, my favorite series of books that I was reading um, over the pandemic, and then those also came to be movies on Netflix, which I watched a lot. I had a I had an interest in Peter Kavinsky and Lara Jean, but mostly because I enjoy fake dating and I enjoy the fact that there was a way that she saw herself in high school. It was a coming of age story, and how she saw herself versus how Peter had always saw her, and the vehicle of fake dating. So that's always fun. Just Right is always a fun movie for me. I know there are people out there that hate the movie, that is like, he could have chose Leslie from the very beginning. Yeah, but people aren't always that great. So, there's an argument that Leslie deserved better. I don't negate that. I do enjoy the movie nonetheless. Will I watch it every time? Absolutely. Um, Easy A, there's a movie that's freaking hilarious. And this premise that she's become what the high school views as a slut when she really hasn't slept with anyone. She's just trying to make people's reputations better. And by people, I mean the boys, because her reputation was in the toilet. Like, it's like there were points in the story where like the adults were looking at her with disdain and saying rude shit to her. And I think that's a commentary on society as a whole. Not particularly today, because this is supposed to be a play on the Scarlet Letter. So some things never change. But did love that movie. Stanley Tucci's in it, and I think that's a plus on its own. So yeah, good times. That is one that I have it downloaded somewhere that I watch, profusely. Friends with Benefits. I mean, Justin Timberlake's in it. It's really all I need. Um, it's a good story with people who think they're going to get their back scratched. And just like fake dating, you think that this is a avenue that works for everybody, and it does work for everybody until it doesn't. And then that's when shit hits the fan. So yeah, it's very funny. Um, and I wasn't prepared for how funny it was going to be. So good times. I've got The Backup Plan here. That's the movie with J-Lo, where she's given up on dating, decides to go with artificial insemination. And I often wonder, how much are people in these movies supposed to be making in order to do some of the things that they're doing? Artificial insemination is a lot of fucking money. And in the movie, I guess she's supposed to be running a pet store, or running something against pet farms that are doing inbreeding and things like that. I haven't seen it in a while, and I probably need to go back and watch it. But it was like, how are you running a pet store and making enough money for artificial insemination? But whatever. Anyway, it works. And, she's very pregnant by the time she realizes she's dating a man. And she has to tell him, like, I'm pregnant, but not with your children, somebody else's children. This was a plan that I had in motion. So either you're getting on this train or you're not. And hilarity ensues, okay? Brown Sugar is a fun one because, my favorite line comes from it. My divorce. My friends and I watch that a lot. Tay Diggs, Sanaa Lathan. You can't go wrong with a Sanaa Lathan movie, so there you go. The Lovebirds, which is a fairly new one, and I think I can't remember if that was in theaters or not, but I did watch it on Netflix. And I still watch it on Netflix because it's still on there. And I get a kick out of that. Issa Rae. She's caught up with her boyfriend, husband, who they think they've witnessed a murder. They're running from the cops because they believe the cops believe that they killed this person. Hilarity ensues, but romance is underneath. Love that shit. What else do I have here? I think that's it. So those are off the top of my head. I had some other ones that I was thinking about. Um, when Harry met Sally, everybody loves that. Um, Bridget Jones is a good one. And I'm trying to think. Jumping the Broom, and my mother loves her some Pretty Woman. That is a fave that she watches pretty regularly. I enjoy How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and 10 Things I Hate About You because Julia Stiles in 10 Things I Hate About You is chef's kiss. Um, and then Netflix had another one that was called Set It Up about these two assistants who were living miserable lives and then they get together. So sometimes the formula for a rom-com is not that hard to get right. Romance makes the world go round, and more people need to get into it. Okay, so in the end, if you haven't seen You, Me, and Tuscany, and you're a rom-com romance lover, you're missing out. Go get the tickets. We definitely want to support Black rom-coms because we don't get enough. We are getting a lot more rom-coms with diverse casts. Um, But a lot of them in the past few years have been, I've seen, released on Netflix. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we can go to the theater and support new and different stories. So more support around these kind of stories brings more stories to the forefront. Um, there's a lot of Black authors, Black and brown authors telling stories that people have not heard of, that people will enjoy. And the more support that those writers get, the more that you can get pictures and things on the big screen. So, love that idea. But anyway, go see the movie. It's cute, it's whimsical, and everything doesn't need to be a struggle. It could just be fun. So, like I said, 5 stars for me, and that's it for this week. I loved it. I think y'all will love it if you give it a chance. So that's it. Peace out for now. Okay, so in the end, if you haven't seen You, Me, and Tuscany, and you're a rom-com romance lover, you're missing out. Go get the tickets. We definitely want to support Black rom-coms because we don't get enough. We are getting a lot more rom-coms with diverse casts. Um, but a lot of them in the past few years have been, I've seen, released on Netflix. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we can go to the theater and support new and different stories. So more support around these kind of stories brings more stories to the forefront. Um, there's a lot of Black authors, Black and brown authors telling stories that people have not heard of, that people will enjoy. And the more support that those writers get, the more that you can get pictures and things on the big screen. So love that idea. But anyway, go see the movie. It's cute, it's whimsical, and everything doesn't need to be a struggle. It could just be fun. So, like I said, 5 stars for me, and that's it for this week. I loved it. I think y'all will love it if you give it a chance. So that's it. Peace out for now.